Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today for our Energy Network webinar, our February edition, and it's also a leap year edition. So the next one of these will be in 4 years' time. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Dylan van der Mesh, and I'm a business development manager. And we've got Michael Crabtree joining us as well, who is a senior technical architect. So anything technical in the energy industry, he is an absolute genius at. So I'm so happy to have him join us today. Also, I had a look at the guest list. There are quite a few recurring faces. It's amazing to see that a lot of you have joined from the very first one and that you've been joining for over maybe about a year now. So it's good to see that. I'm glad that it's almost become a recurring event in your calendar that you're joining every quarter. And to all the new faces, welcome. I'm glad you've joined us today, and I'm glad something has piqued your attention and you will gain some sort of information and something valuable out of this. We do these every quarter. The reason being is that I know it's so difficult to try to stay on top of all the new technologies, the trends, the news, the laws, and any regulations. This industry feels so often. And between your day-to-day jobs, your personal lives, and getting pulled onto parts that aren't even on your day-to-day jobs, it's really difficult to stay on top of everything. So we've designed these as a knowledge sharing platform, and please feel free to share this with any of your colleagues who you think might be interested. I know in the weeks leading up to this, I had a few emails from people saying that they're either on leave or can't attend, but wish they did. So feel free to share this. And if you're like me, I know I personally struggle a bit to take notes while listening to a webinar or anything of that sort. So don't feel stressed about that. We'll be sending a copy of this to you, and that you can share with whoever you feel would enjoy it. If you have any questions, there's going to be a little Q&A box. Put them in there, and then at the end of the webinar, we'll have a dedicated session for it. So I'll read out the questions, and then Mick will answer them accordingly. Okay, the agenda for today. So I know Mick and I had a trial run the other day, and it's super interesting. You're going to absolutely love what we've got in store for you today. The first thing we're going to talk about is improving management of remote sites during rapid expansion. As I said earlier, this industry is growing. There's a lot of investment. There is a booming industry at hand. How do you improve the management of these remote sites? They're often not in big cities like London or Manchester or Liverpool. They're often in the middle of nowhere, but how do you control the management of these? We're going to talk about cloud-based security systems. These are designed to help scale site security. Previous ways of doing this is through an on-prem method, but with ever-developing complexity and growing business plans and different sites expanding throughout the country, how do you keep on top of all of that? How do you do it from a central hub? Mick's going to get into that. We'll talk about solutions for reducing admin across old and new sites. Often we tend to see companies that purchase sites that were developed and maintained by another company. They'll buy the site, build it up to either sell it on or generate electricity and profits from it. But how do you make sure that all the procedures, policies, and admin is in line with your current goals, but also with your future goals? Within those three different stages, there's often teething issues within each phase, and you don't want to be left behind between the old sites, which are now in your current portfolio, and your future sites and your current sites. I don't need to stress the importance of health and safety. We all know that this is of paramount importance to almost every single business, but none more so than the energy industry. These sites can be very dangerous for workers. If anything were to happen, then that could be disastrous. So we'll give you tips, tricks, ideas, and ways to improve the standards throughout your facilities to make sure that all your workers are safe and that your health and safety policies are at a much stronger posture. We'll talk about tools to improve everyday work and simplify procedures for your engineers. Engineers love to help people. That's the way their brains are designed. So they can get pulled onto different sort of tasks and admin and often struggle to get down to what they're actually there for. We're going to give you ideas and food for thought on ways to simplify those secondary tasks and let them create value within your company, and begin working on things that will create value, new ideas, and value to your business. Lastly, we'll talk about what's next, such as our webinar, which will be in May, which will actually be our first one of summer. And then at a very high level, for those of you who don't know what Bedroq does. So we manage mission critical IT and operational technology for highly regulated organizations throughout the UK. So I can see Mick is chomping at the bit to get going. He has been practicing all week and is very excited, so I don't want to keep him any longer. So over to you, Mick.
Thank you, Dylan, for that introduction. No, thank you very much. And yeah, welcome. As Dylan said, first webinar of 2024. Last one being in November. So yeah, thank you for joining us. I'm sure that you're aware that renewable energy sources have really kind of grown in the last numerous years in terms of expansion, and the UK kind of trying to prep itself and become more ready in terms of being able to provide electricity or gas or whatever the energy is to the UK. So renewables expanded by about 50% 2023, with solar PV being about 75% of that. That is worldwide. A little bit different for the UK. Obviously, we're a bit cloudy, so we have to think of other ways sometimes. But certainly in the UK, 43% of all the energy in 2023 came from renewable sources, which is fantastic. With others making 33% now fossil fuels, which it has been in the news that less than 1% of that was in coal now, with 31% being gas. And then there are a few other imports, things like that, 13% in nuclear. In terms of our client base, we've really seen a mixture of traditional power providers who have one or more ways of providing power to the grid, as well as an emergence really of providers who are investing in particular technologies, whether that be wind, solar PV, and things like that. In 2023, we had people, again, mixture of sites, with greenfield new builds. Although we do have some people, brownfield sites where maybe they've got previous energy production and therefore it's a little bit easier to purchase. Maybe the planning permissions are already there to help with building a new site there, as well as clients who have actually bought fully operating energy production sites from somebody else. And certainly, we're only in February in 2024, and we're already seeing investment in areas such as hydrogen, which certainly makes really interesting, exciting development that gives the UK that diverse, robust, resilient power network that it needs, really, without lowering our reliance on imports and things like that. So what does it mean? It means we've got more generations of energy in the UK, which is great. So yeah, expansion in the energy sector, as we said, wind, that's been developed over the last decade or so. Solar, certainly in terms of farms, smaller sites as well, and making use of that wherever possible. Gas generation is still key. Certainly tend to be larger organisations who do that type of thing, and certainly become building these relatively small but also efficient systems. And then battery storage. Battery storage is something that standalone, whether that's tagged on or bolted onto generation areas such as solar and gas and other such ones. So battery storage is obviously something that's really growing in the sector. And as I said, hydrogen as well. We've seen some in the news about the investment in that, both for power generation, but also for the production of hydrogen for things like vehicles as well. So yeah, there's certainly challenges in these areas that different sites may have different styles of SCADA systems and things like that. Certainly different levels of cybersecurity controls and physical methods of site security. Certainly we're aware of things like in solar fields and things like that. It's not necessarily easy to put an 8-foot metal fence around it and all that kind of thing with some of the controls that you may be able to implement into other sites. We did talk about that a little bit in the previous webinar, so if anyone's not seen that, just give Dylan a shout. He can certainly send you a link to it. So yeah, we've got these different physical methods, different controls, different things. And obviously if anyone joined any of the last webinar, they'll have seen something like this, where we've got all these different things. However, this time we're looking at, what does that look like in terms of these multiple sites, and being able to look after them and being able to control them remotely as you expand and build more of these. So yeah, and again, if you're building new ones, you may have different suppliers at these different places. We did talk about that in the previous webinar again. So yeah, do give us a shout if you've not seen it. And being able to kind of create coherence and stability as you try to bring these into your portfolio, and being able to control them and work with them remotely. Obviously, some of the things we looked at in previous was also around that ability to bring that all into one easy to manage system. Obviously, the idea of this webinar is to talk about a lot of things other than some of the services we provide, but yeah, we can certainly provide that and help with that, or help you with that if you're looking at being able to make sure you've got standards and robust systems across every site that you are putting together, building, managing, or you've just purchased, or you've just got started working at. So how can cloud-based security systems support scalable security? So really, if you've got separate sites at the moment, then potentially they would have separate infrastructure, separate hardware, potentially separate security systems, each one having its own managerial overhead, whatever that is, in the different kind of systems that you've got there. Potentially different O&M processes, different types of site access, different types of weekly, daily checks that maybe if you have got a control room or a central place for doing that, could potentially quite chaotic with separate computers, keyboards, mice. I've been in a number of operation centers whereby there'll be 2 or 3 screens on a desk, but there'll also be 3, 4 keyboards, mice with stickers on saying what does what. So moving around desks to be able to actually remotely manage each individual site, and not having that kind of holistic view of what's going on. So yeah, that obviously causes a little bit of chaos there potentially. Having a centralized system allows you to centralize your management, centralize your security, that's site visibility, certainly centralize your remote access, and we're going to be talking about that and some of the standards and some of the guidance that's that comes out of places like the cybersecurity center that we'll be talking about. And also central visibility of your plant systems. You can certainly do that and have that be holistically viewable to you. So if you are getting things from National Grid in terms of your statements from them to ramp up, ramp down, balance your plant, etc., then you can certainly have holistic visibility to be able to understand what your various plants are doing and be able to make adjustments remotely as appropriate. So yeah, instead of accessing individually, also you can set up your new site and manage it via that single management system. And we'll talk about the different kind of areas. So benefits: single place for all of your daily tasks. So you're not jumping between keyboards, mice, systems, desks, or even having to have people on individual sites to be able to achieve that. Clear visibility of all those assets in one place. Also the ability for sites to scale up and down as required, and we're going to be looking at some infrastructure and some solutions shortly, but we're also aware of some of our clients buying sites and then maybe looking at the types of energy that they want to either store or produce or do whatever at that site. So to be able to scale what it's doing, and being able to deal with that appropriately. And also adding new sites can be much more cost effective because already your centralized management, your processes and procedures, they're already formed and mature, and therefore you're just applying them to that site. Or if you're buying a site, you're going to look at that, audit it, and be able to go, okay, look at what we can do to start initially to be able to apply our processes and procedures, and obviously, overlay our management systems on that site. So let's have a look at some solutions for reducing some admin access across both new and old sites. So let's have a look at centralized management. So we can centralize the management of CCTV access control, burglar alarm, so IDS systems, those types of things, fence line protection, those types of stuff. We talked about that in the previous webinar, but also that centralization maybe, or certainly centralized access of some of the SCADA type systems as well, and control systems. And as we said, being able to react to whatever you get from grid. So yeah, maybe they all have similar setup processes as well, which means you create standards across them. And being able to give centralized access to these assets without setting up each site individually. So for example, access to the site. We don't have to have individual systems, and if you've got an engineer or a visitor who needs access to a particular site, we don't have to go onto that site separately and create access for that. And then maybe that person needs to go somewhere else, and therefore we now have to set it up on more than one site. And our ability to audit, track that becomes much more complex, as we know. Yeah, and also training as well. You know, if we've got a set of operators, we can certainly train them on a single set of systems as new site added. We're not really training staff on new systems and how to work this thing wherever it is. They may need training that's site specific about the site, what it does, the health and safety procedures that are applicable to that site, etc. But we're certainly not having to train them on how to use a particular piece of software or a particular system. So centralized network management. Now, I touched on network management on the previous webinar, and we didn't go into huge amounts of difficulty, but having a centralized, clear visibility of your network system. You know, most of the equipment these days, vast majority of that is now going to be on some kind of OT network, or certainly some kind of IT network of some description. So having clear visibility of that equipment is absolutely key in terms of finding any problems, any issues, reacting to problems, and also creating that secure controlled access to those as well in terms of engineers managing them. And we're going to, as I said, we're going to be talking about that access because it's really important. And again, in terms of dealing with issues, dealing with problems, it allows for that centralized processes. So if we find a problem at the site, then we've got the ability to apply the same processes, procedures in terms of understanding what's wrong and how we're going to fix it. So let's have a look at some kind of, this is kind of an idea, or certainly some kind of way that you may think about working. So as we said, centralizing your management system. So in this diagram here, we've got a data center, but this could be any space. Maybe it's your head office, maybe it's your headquarters, although there may be some reasons why you may not want to do that from a security and resilience perspective. So we've got our various management systems. So we've got site security, and we've got all of the systems there in terms of management and access. We've got our network management and cyber protection systems, again, really key. And with things like 62443, it's becoming even more important, and certainly a lot more guidance coming out on that. So yeah, how are we seeing what's happening? If you've been attacked from various sites, how would you kind of at a centralized point where that starts to become and made available and apparent to you? Again, backup systems. Having individual backup systems at individual sites is costly and is quite intensive to maintain. Having backup systems in a data center means that that's relatively straightforward. You've got a very well established set of procedures in order to back up, and also in terms of bringing things back online if in the problems and issues and things like that. So yeah, and as you can see, we've also got some remote access there as well. So we are authenticating people who come in, because you're going to have maybe your suppliers, maybe your partners, you're going to have maybe your on-call engineers, you're going to have these people, and how you bring them in, allow them access into the system should they need it, and audit that centrally so you understand what's going on and are able to see all that is really key. So yeah, maybe you've got your remote access systems there as well. As you can see from this diagram, the operations center is a separate piece. So here we've got a single space with SCADA management, our network management, and our cybersecurity systems. So we've got visibility of those centrally, and we've got our site security as well. And we can create that and create a little bit of calm instead of the chaos of all these individual keyboards, mice, desks, screens with labels on, so we know which one's which. And then we've got our site itself. And so this is kind of a bit of an appraisal of our previous webinar, but yeah, in here we kind of break it down into a couple of different areas. We've got our energy and distribution storage systems, and that's really, you know, what you guys know and love and understand. And we've also got our site security with all those different methods and things we've talked about in the past, and our ability to make them visible and apply the same controls at every area and at every site and centralize that. But also things like power provision and environmental monitoring, clearly quite important if this is a remote site, it's an unmanned site. So things like understanding, you know, is there a power failure? When did that happen? Of all of our systems that are applicable being shut down in an effective manner to make sure they don't get damaged by that power outage. And also environmental monitoring, so we know things like if our aircon has broken in the control in the comms room and therefore could be overheating, or whatever that may be. So we can break that into various systems, and we can centralize the management of those systems, and we can also secure the access. And we can do all that centrally, and that's really key to look at that. And it really does help you if you can centralize all of your management. What we can also do, we've centralized the management, you've centralized all of your procedures, and you've also got this really now neat, tidy control room and operations center. Because we've done all that, we've got the ability to really have backup systems if you need them. So adding backup operations centers, maybe smaller scale, maybe a copy of the big one, maybe as part of your BR and DC plan, you've got maybe it's just one room or an office somewhere with just a couple of dedicated machines ready for the task. But you can plan for it. It's really simple to put that in. That could be anywhere in the world. Not a problem. So yeah, really easy to add that in. So just to appraise that, use a network management system. Can't talk about it enough. Being able to have visibility of the actual network that's supporting your equipment and supporting the systems that are running is really super important. You know, gone are the days where something breaks and we have to go on site to go and find out what's up. You know, we really need to know what the problem is and how we can get that fixed and working as quickly as possible. If you've got older existing sites, then we appreciate that sometimes, you know, you don't want to come in there, you don't want to be coming in and replacing equipment straight off the bat. I have put there, you know, replace network hardware if it's not manageable. You know, some people in the early days of IT and networks decided that they would have unmanaged equipment. For numerous reasons, that is a really bad idea. You've no idea from a maintenance perspective. You don't know if it's broken. From a cybersecurity perspective, you're not going to get any logs. You're not going to get any information. You're not going to be able to lock down anything on it. So we would definitely say you should be replacing that stuff. If you've got existing equipment, you're looking like, well, we don't want to be replacing this, then certainly being able to come into it and add management onto existing network hardware is a relatively straightforward task. And you can use that for remote management. And obviously, you know, changing passwords, those types of things. If you're buying an existing site, you should really be going in there and changing all those things. For site security, then, yeah, any cameras, if there's any cameras on that site and you're not looking to replace them immediately, then in some respect, you know, you may be able to swap out the software to bring that into line with what you're doing elsewhere, using things like the ONVIF standards. It may also allow you to mitigate against other things, such as, you know, if you have got certain types of hardware that you're not supposed to be using anymore potentially, such as Hikvision and things, then you've got that ability to say, okay, from a risk perspective, we want to remove the recording solution. And what we're going to do is we're going to segment off all of our cameras, but we're going to add them into this centralized management system and this centralized way of doing things so that we can use mitigations until we are able to swap those out for something else. So there's things we can do. Inspecting our cabling, can it be reutilized? For access control, you know, door components such as keypads, locks, exit buttons, they are all standard, so you can reuse those. So yeah, off the door controller that sits there, connect up a new one, add it to your centralized system, and suddenly that site is now manageable centrally, which is absolutely great. And yeah, connections from third-party systems too to give remote availability. So if your site that you've purchased has existing fire, IDS systems, those types of things, we can take outputs from those, relatively straightforward, and give visibility remote of those as well if you don't have it either at the beginning, interim, or in the future as well. So there's certainly lots of things that you can do to give yourself that remote visibility of existing sites as well, because it'd be lovely to put everything in and just flatten the whole thing and start again, wouldn't it? But there's lots of reasons why that might not either be possible or something that you guys want to do with any sites that you've kind of inherited or purchased, etc. So we are going to talk a little bit around remote secure connectivity, because I think it's really important. This line here and this graphic, as you can see, looks a little bit different to the others. This is something that's come from guidance from the NCSC, which is the National Cybersecurity Centre. They're part of GCHQ, so they're kind of the more front face of that, so they help give guidance on lots of areas. But in this case, it's guidance on specifically on the remote access to CNI systems. And you may have noticed from some of the other images I've used so far, and if you look at this system, there's something really obvious about that energy site. And that is there's only one connection in and out of it. There's no connection to multiple ops rooms. There's no connection in and out separately for whoever your managed service or support people are. There's no connection to your remote staff who can come in individually whenever they like. And there's a huge reason why the NCS said, don't be doing that. That's a really bad idea. Yeah. And everything, as we can see from this picture, is brokered. All remote access, all secure access is brokered via that data center. And there's, again, really good reason for that. Reduce the attack surface, as we say in the cyber world. So we're reducing the amount of potential connectivity in and out of that energy site. The only way in is via our very secure, very controlled data center environment. So our physical access is secure, our actual connection into the energy site is secure. It's all audited, so we can audit via the data center. We can audit everything, any person that comes in remotely, any connectivity that's made that eventually makes its way through to the energy site. Really key, really important. Yeah, individual connections into site is definitely not the best way forward. And if anyone is looking at that and starts to think, oh gosh, okay, yeah, we need to think about that. Yeah, come and talk to us. Yeah, reach out to Dylan, come and speak to me. We can certainly speak to you guys how best you can secure those. So moving on from the strict talking to about cybersecurity. Let's talk about how we can improve health and safety. Because again, you know, sometimes when you're looking at these systems, you're looking at, you know, making the most out of your investment. So yes, we might use some of these systems for security, but also health and safety really key. So our visitor management that we might be using for security, you know, knowing who is on site, where they are, and things like that is really key. It's great having an unmanaged site and then having a visitor log there to log when people are coming and going, but that piece of paper sat there is pretty useless if it's lone worker and something that man goes down. How they supposed to give you that piece of paper? I'll tell you on the phone about it. So being able to pull a list of who's on site and who's not is fantastic, and where they are potentially. Great for health and safety. We can also create analytics and alerts for all sorts of things, you know, very advanced these days. So we can look at PPE. Is someone wearing a hard hat or not? Is somebody not wearing the correct PPE? Have we got somebody who's gone man down and is suddenly kind of still for an amount of time? We can also look for things like people putting boxes in restricted places, blocking exits and things like that. And we can also connect up to certain types of sensors that allow us to look at things like leak detection and things like that. So we can do lots of things and alert this central place that without these alerts might be overwhelmed and checking all these systems all the time. We'll be able to have alerts that are meaningful to them and for them to deal with in a really constructive way. So that can make a real difference. And again, as we said, alerting on third-party systems, so obtaining alerts from those fire alarms, gas detectors, etc. And in some cases, as we learned from the previous webinar, we can have things like those be actually brought into the system to give even more information. Alerting on power issues, temperature changes, as we said. And for one client, which I think is worth looking at, is that they had a problem where health and safety wise, they might be having a problem, but to stand in that room and wait for the bang, the crack, whatever's going on to find out what it is probably not the safest thing in the world. So, you know, we can use cameras that adhere to standards, can go into your standard systems such as your video systems and things, and can be placed in that area, maybe with a portable battery, maybe off a mains or whatever's applicable, or even using PoE. So all we run is a network cable in there and connect it to it. And can help, and you can put them there and identify problems, and you can put them quite close. So we did that with a client and proved really useful, and they will put them in there now for testing and other sorts of things. So yeah, so just to round up a little bit, as well, I can see time's running on just a little bit, getting a bit overexcited about this thing again. Tools to improve, and yeah, how can we help you guys improve your everyday work, simplify your procedures? So yeah, key thing, plan. Create a stable, robust, centralized management. Can't say that enough. Really helps in terms of being able to create a centralized place, be able to roll out your new sites efficiently and effectively, and allow you to help you create these site blueprints so that standards can be applied across all your sites. Yeah, simplify, reduce the number of different systems, reduce the different methods of control, and create that single method of access, which is auditable. And obviously that allows you to standardize and create more efficiencies in the future. So yeah, so thank you very much. If anyone does have any questions, feel free to drop them in the Q&A.
Hi Mick. Yes, we've got some actually.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, no. So the first one we got was, does a cloud-based system reduce my risk? For example, will I be required to upgrade any kit, for example?
So as we said, really, that will be based on an assessment. You're absolutely right. So in theory, yes, because if we can create a centralized system, then what we can do then is we can assess that. So as I kind of alluded to, it may be that maybe your security systems, there may be the need to take out and replace some equipment, but we're not there removing everything and starting again. And also, as you say, with the best will in the world, you know, SCADA and control systems are extensive. They can be different depending on the type of energy it is, and therefore, you know, using remote access methods and things like that, we can certainly create access into a system without fundamentally replacing that entire system, which would be very costly, as you say, Dylan.
Okay,
so, yeah.
Thank you for that. Another one we got was, can you integrate different systems into one control room, or would I need multiple systems throughout our ecosystem?
Again, it would depend on the sites themselves, but theoretically, yes. And even if we do have, you know, there are ways of being able to take different disparate systems and make your interaction with them a lot easier and coherent in control rooms. So yes, is a simple answer to that. We can certainly help with that if people do have separate systems and they currently do have these pods within a room that they're having to run between.
Yeah. Okay, and the last question was, with the centralized VM analytics, what alerts can you create? Will it be able to alert our centralized room? And I think this is to do with lone workers potentially injuring themselves, falling over.
Yeah, absolutely, you can. So there's different ways of doing that. Obviously, again, screens, if there's lots of screens, I know that sometimes a lot of people will demonstrate, well, we get an alert on this screen, and that's great. But we've been doing some work with how we can make more visual alerts. So we can have something like a lamp. It looks like a siren, to be honest. We can make it make a noise, but it's also got some coloured lights in there. So yeah, if you've got a man down, it can flash red, or if you've got an alarm at a site for security, you can make it flash. So we can give very visual alerts as well for that site. And again, if you've got traditional, say you've got muster points with buttons, or you've got things like eye wash areas, we can certainly connect. And again, they will often have buttons that when you hit it, it'll alarm something in the site. We can certainly look at those and go, okay, we can connect that up to the central system. and give you the visibility of those as well. Yeah, definitely.
Okay, amazing. And that's all our questions for today.
That's some really good ones today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so our energy, as I mentioned at the top, our next webinar is in May. And within this one, we'll be discussing some technology innovations. I know this is always quite exciting. People love to hear about new, exciting things in the market. So join us on the 30th of May. We'll be sending out an invite for that a little bit close to the time and a bit more detail of the agenda. And also, we'll be sending out a recording of this. So please remember to share with friends, family, colleagues, whoever you think will enjoy this. And thanks again for joining us. So to all the new faces, I hope you enjoyed it and that there were some bits of knowledge that you've taken out from today. And to the recurring faces, I hope to see you continue your streak, and we'll see you on the next one. And yeah, reach out if you have any questions. Happy to schedule a call between Mick and I to go over anything we've spoken about today.